I had just moved into my ranch, minding my own business, when an HOA Karen decided I didn't belong there. She watched my every move, questioned my presence, and within hours, she called the cops on me, confident she was about to have me removed. What she didn't know was that this ranch wasn't just my home, it was the one place she never should have challenged. And when the truth came out, everything changed instantly. When I first moved into the ranch, my only goal was peace. I had deliberately chosen a property far from city noise, HOA-controlled neighborhoods, and the endless rules that tell you what color your fence should be or how tall your grass can grow. This ranch was supposed to be freedom, wide land, open skies, and privacy. No neighbors breathing down my neck. No authority figures pretending they owned my life. At least, that's what I believed. The very first morning after moving in, I noticed something felt off. I was unloading equipment near the barn when I saw a car parked along the road, just outside my property line. It wasn't doing anything obvious, just sitting there. I ignored it at first. Rural areas have curious neighbors. People notice new faces. That's normal. But the car didn't leave. An hour passed. Then another. Every time I looked up, it was still there. Eventually, the driver stepped out. A woman, arms crossed, sunglasses on, staring directly at my ranch like she was inspecting a crime scene. That was my first encounter with HOA Karen. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't wave. She didn't ask how long I planned to stay. Instead, she walked straight toward my fence, stopped inches from it, and loudly cleared her throat as if demanding attention. "Excuse me," she said sharply. "Who authorized you to move in here?" That question alone told me everything I needed to know about her mindset. I calmly replied, "I did. I own the property." She laughed. Not a friendly laugh, but a dismissive one. The kind people use when they've already decided you're lying. "No," she said. "This area is under HOA regulation. You can't just move in without approval." That was the moment I realized she was attempting her first false authority move. She spoke with complete confidence, like someone used to being obeyed without question. She didn't show documents. She didn't explain boundaries. She simply declared authority and expected compliance. I asked her which HOA she represented. She hesitated for half a second, barely noticeable, but enough. "The Community Association," she said vaguely. "I'm on the board." That response was another red flag. Legitimate authority figures don't avoid specifics. I informed her, politely, that my ranch was not part of any HOA and never had been. I even pointed out the property markers clearly visible along the fence line. She didn't like that. Her tone changed instantly. Her voice got louder. Her posture stiffened. "That's not what my records say," she snapped. "You need to stop all activity immediately until this is reviewed." There it was, the escalation. Karen's strategy was simple and predictable. First, assert authority. If challenged, escalate with threats. If that fails, bring in enforcement. She pulled out her phone and began taking pictures of my ranch without permission, my equipment, my truck, even me. "I'm documenting violations," she said smugly. I asked her to leave my property boundary. She ignored me. Instead, she began listing random rules, unauthorized structures, improper land use, failure to notify the HOA of new ownership. None of it applied. None of it was real. But she said it with absolute certainty. That's the dangerous part of false authority. It doesn't rely on truth. It relies on confidence and intimidation. I could tell this wasn't her first time doing this. She had probably bullied dozens of people into compliance simply by sounding official. When I didn't react the way she expected, no fear, no apologies, no backing down, she became visibly irritated. "You people always think you're special," she muttered. That comment told me this wasn't about rules. It was about control. She finally stepped back, but not before delivering her threat. "I'll be reporting this," she said. "You'll hear from authorities very soon." Then she left. Or so I thought. Over the next 2 days, the harassment continued. She drove past my ranch multiple times a day, slowing down deliberately. She stopped at the fence again, this time with another woman, whispering and pointing like they were watching a zoo exhibit. I later learned she had already begun spreading rumors, that I was trespassing, that the property transfer was illegal, that I was attempting to bypass HOA regulations. All lies. But lies repeated with confidence can feel real to people who don't know better. Karen even left a printed notice of violation taped to my gate. No official letterhead, no legal seal, just bold red text and fake deadlines. That was when I knew she had crossed from annoying into dangerous. False authority becomes a serious problem when someone believes they're entitled to enforce rules that don't exist. She wasn't just annoying me anymore, she was attempting to intimidate me out of my own property. The irony was almost funny. I owned the ranch outright. Clear title. No HOA, no shared roads, no easements, nothing tying me to her community at all. But Karen didn't care about facts. Facts didn't serve her goal. Her goal was submission. And when submission didn't happen, she decided to escalate further, setting the stage for the biggest mistake of her HOA career. Because the next step in her plan wasn't another fake notice or passive-aggressive drive-by. It was calling the cops. And that's where her false authority move was about to completely collapse. Karen didn't call the cops immediately. That's the part most people don't understand about people like her. They don't rush. They plan. They rehearse the narrative in their heads until they're convinced they're the victim and everyone else is the criminal. For 2 full days after our first confrontation, she prepared. She gathered what she believed was evidence, rehearsed her story, and built a version of reality where she was the rightful authority and I was an intruder who needed to be removed. On the 3rd morning, I woke up to the sound of tires crunching slowly along the gravel road leading to my ranch. I looked out the window and immediately recognized her car. It stopped right in front of my gate. She didn't get out this time. Instead, she stayed inside, phone pressed tightly to her ear, eyes locked on my property like she was overseeing an arrest operation. I already knew what was happening. She was calling the cops. I stayed calm. I didn't rush outside. I didn't confront her. I had nothing to hide and nothing to fear. I had dealt with enough bureaucratic nonsense in my life to recognize when someone was bluffing with authority they didn't actually possess. About 20 minutes later, a patrol vehicle turned onto the road. Then another. 2 sheriff's deputies pulled up behind Karen's car. She stepped out immediately, her entire posture changing the moment she saw the uniforms. Her shoulders straightened. Her voice got louder. Her confidence multiplied. She approached the deputies before they even had a chance to speak. "Thank God you're here," she said dramatically. "This man is trespassing and refusing to comply with HOA regulations." The deputies glanced at each other, then looked toward me standing calmly near the gate. One of them asked the first question that would unravel her entire plan. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "who owns this property?" Karen didn't miss a beat. "The HOA controls this land," she replied confidently. "He moved in without authorization." That was lie number 1. The deputy raised an eyebrow. "Controls it how?" Karen hesitated. "Just slightly." Then she doubled down. "It's under our jurisdiction. He's violating multiple community rules." The deputy nodded slowly, then turned to me. "Sir," he asked, "do you have proof of ownership?" I smiled. Not smugly, not sarcastically, just calmly. I walked to my truck, retrieved a folder, and handed over a copy of my deed and property survey. Clean, clear, no HOA mention, no shared boundaries. The deputy studied the documents carefully. Karen leaned in, peering over his shoulder like she expected to catch me in a lie. "This doesn't mean anything," she said quickly. "Our HOA predates his paperwork." That was lie number 2. The deputy didn't respond to her immediately. Instead, he radioed in the parcel number and requested confirmation from county records. This is the moment Karen began to lose control, but she didn't realize it yet. While we waited, she shifted tactics. She accused me of blocking community access roads. False. She claimed my fence violated setback rules. False. She suggested I was running an illegal operation. Completely false. Each accusation was delivered with the same confidence, the same entitlement, and the same expectation that authority would bend to her will. But something wasn't going the way she expected. The deputies weren't siding with her. They weren't raising their voices. They weren't ordering me off the property. They weren't treating her like the unquestioned authority she believed herself to be. Instead, they were asking questions. That alone unsettled her. "Why are you questioning me?" she snapped. "I'm on the HOA board." One of the deputies finally addressed that. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "HOA authority doesn't override county property law." That sentence hit her like a slap. She scoffed. "That's not true." The deputy didn't argue. He didn't lecture. He simply waited. Minutes passed. Then the radio crackled. "Parcel confirmed," dispatch said. "Private ownership. No HOA jurisdiction. Property boundaries match survey." Silence. Absolute, uncomfortable silence. Karen's face changed instantly. The color drained from it. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. She tried to recover. "That can't be right," she said. "There must be a mistake." The deputy handed my documents back to me. There's no mistake, he said. This property is not part of your HOA. That should have ended it. But Karen wasn't done. People who rely on false authority don't surrender easily. When their power evaporates, they panic. She raised her voice. So you're just going to let him violate community standards? The deputy turned fully toward her now. Ma'am, he said firmly, there are no community standards here. This is his land. That was when Karen made her biggest mistake. She accused the deputies of negligence. You're failing to enforce the law, she said. I'll be reporting this. The temperature dropped. The deputies' demeanor shifted, not to anger, but to authority. One of them asked her a question that completely flipped the situation. Did you call us claiming trespassing? Yes, she said proudly. And did you know this was private property? She hesitated. I suspected. So you made a false report, the deputy concluded. Karen's eyes widened. I was protecting the community. No, the deputy said. You were abusing emergency services. Now she was the one being questioned. They asked her for identification. They asked her to explain her authority. They asked her to provide any legal documentation supporting her claims. She had none. Every word she said dug the hole deeper. The deputies warned her clearly. Continued harassment or false reports would result in legal consequences. That was the moment Karen realized the cops weren't her weapon. They were her undoing. Her voice cracked. Her confidence shattered. She tried to laugh it off. I think we've had a misunderstanding, she said weakly. The deputy wasn't amused. You need to leave this property immediately, he said. And you are not to return. Karen looked at me, angry, embarrassed, humiliated. For the first time since I met her, she had no power. She got into her car and drove away without another word. The deputies apologized for the inconvenience. Unfortunately, one of them said, we deal with HOA abuse like this more than you'd think. That stuck with me. Karen had fully expected the cops to enforce her imaginary authority. Instead, they exposed it. And word travels fast in small communities. By the end of the week, everyone knew what happened. The HOA board distanced itself from her. Neighbors stopped backing her claims. Her reputation took a hit she couldn't recover from. And all of it happened because she believed a phone call could replace actual authority. She was wrong. Very wrong. And the final blow, the moment she truly froze, was still coming. Karen didn't disappear after the cops left. People like her never do. They retreat, regroup, and wait for what they believe will be the perfect moment to reclaim control. For a few days, everything went quiet. No drive-bys. No fake notices. No whispers at the fence. If I hadn't already dealt with her, I might have believed the situation was over. But silence, in this case, was not peace. It was tension building. I continued settling into the ranch, repairing fences, organizing equipment, restoring the old barn that had stood there long before Karen ever imagined she had authority over anything. Every post I reinforced, every gate I secured, felt like reclaiming something deeper than property. It felt like restoring order where arrogance had tried to dominate. Word of what happened spread quickly. Rural communities thrive on stories, and this one had everything: an HOA board member, a failed police call, and a ranch she never had control over. Neighbors who had kept their distance before now waved as they passed. A few stopped by just to introduce themselves, careful at first, then curious. And in every conversation, Karen's name came up. She's been doing this for years, one neighbor admitted quietly. Someone finally stood up to her, said another. She thought she owned everything, a third laughed. Each comment added context. Karen hadn't frozen yet, but the cracks were spreading. About a week later, I received a certified letter. Not from the HOA. From a law firm. That was when I knew Karen had made her final, desperate move. The letter claimed that my ranch ownership was under legal review, due to conflicting historical boundaries, and demanded I cease all development until further notice. It was worded aggressively, designed to intimidate, and filled with legal jargon meant to scare someone unfamiliar with property law. But there was a problem. I was very familiar with property law. Because Karen still didn't know who I really was. I made one phone call. Then another. Within hours, the situation shifted dramatically. The law firm that sent the letter received documentation they hadn't expected, records, filings, and confirmations that made it very clear they had been misled. By the next morning, the letter was formally withdrawn. That same afternoon, Karen showed up again. This time, she wasn't confident. She wasn't loud. She wasn't smug. She stood at the gate with her arms tightly crossed, eyes darting around like she was afraid someone was watching. I walked out slowly and stopped a few feet away, still on my side of the property line. "What do you want?" I asked calmly. She swallowed hard. "We need to talk," she said. That was new. People like Karen don't ask to talk unless they've lost leverage. She started with half apologies. "I think there's been some confusion," she said. Things escalated unnecessarily. I didn't respond. Silence is powerful when someone expects resistance. She continued, nervously adjusting her sunglasses. "I didn't realize who you were." There it was. The opening she had been avoiding since day one. I raised an eyebrow. "And who do you think I am?" She hesitated. "I know you're not just a random buyer," she said carefully. That's when I told her. I explained the history of the ranch, how it had been in my family's trust, how the land had been intentionally excluded from HOA development decades ago, and how I wasn't just an owner, but the legal representative tied to the original zoning agreements that prevented HOA expansion into this area. I also explained my background. Why I understood property law. Why intimidation tactics didn't work on me. Why involving law enforcement without cause was a serious mistake. As I spoke, Karen's face changed. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes widened. Her hands trembled slightly. This wasn't anger. This was fear. She finally understood what she had done. She hadn't bullied a newcomer. She had challenged someone with the authority, knowledge, and legal standing to dismantle everything she relied on. That was the moment Karen froze. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But completely. No interruptions. No excuses. No threats. Just silence. "I didn't know," she whispered. "That's the problem," I replied. "You never asked." She tried to salvage dignity. "I was just doing my job," she said weakly. "No," I said firmly. "You were abusing power you didn't have." That landed. Her shoulders sagged. She asked a question she never thought she'd have to ask. What happens now? That question flipped the entire dynamic. The person who had tried to control me was now waiting for my decision. I didn't threaten her. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I told her the truth. "What happens now depends on whether you leave me alone." She nodded quickly. "I will," she said. "I promise." And she meant it. Because a week later, Karen resigned from the HOA board. No announcement. No farewell. Just gone. The community noticed. The harassment stopped. The fake notices disappeared. The drive-bys ended. Months passed, and peace returned to the ranch. Occasionally, someone would mention her name in passing. She doesn't have the same influence anymore. She keeps to herself now. She learned a hard lesson. They were right. Karen didn't just lose control that day. She lost the illusion of authority she had built her identity around. And all it took was one ranch, one phone call, and the moment she finally learned who I really was. That was the day she froze. And never recovered.